Next, Mr. Gregory Hession is a lawyer in the state of Massachusetts who has practiced family and law against child support protective services and false allegation domestic restraining orders to harm millions of families in this country every year, and what we can do about it. Mr. Gregory Hession.
Good afternoon. Right now, as we speak, there are 500,000 children in state captivity. 500,000 in captivity. This afternoon, I'd like to tell you a little bit about how the child protective system works and what you can do about it, and some of the experiences that I've had. While we weren't watching, somebody took our American system of government with its due process and its protections against government coming into our families, and they took it while we weren't looking, and they replaced it with a Soviet-style system. Now, just like in the Soviet Union, a car can drive up to your home secretly in the night and take your children out of your home, and you cannot do anything about it. Not too long ago, at 11:30 p.m. in the little city in Massachusetts, a mother and her 4-year-old child with an 85-year-old grandmother at 11:30 at night were raided by a SWAT team of 7 people armed, and pried the 4-year-old off of mother and took the child away on a Friday night. Monday morning we went in to try to get a petition for habeas corpus. The judge would not let us even go in front of the bench. The child was then extradited back to the state in which he had reported this family for some. 3 days later, the Florida court decided that there was no problem and turned out loose. The agency which had sent most of these thugs said, quote, "Well, we think the child had a good experience with our agency." Yeah, everybody, a good time was had by all. CPS does kill. It kills many children, and it kills our souls, and it kills our hearts as parents. I've spent nearly 14 years in the pit of vipers called this court, trying to defend families against having their children stolen one way or the other. As many of you here know, restraining orders often are used as a device in this too. Let me tell you what happened the other day in a court. We did a restraining order hearing involving a family that had children, and the individual who was defending against this order asked one question: "Please state your name for the court." And the judge said, "I'm denying your motion."
What?
So,
Hell no.
this war really has 3 fronts in my view, folks. First one is the divorce courts. The second one is the restraining order problem, the domestic abuse restraining order problem, and the third one is the CPS problem, the Child Protective Services. It's what I call the iron triangle. It's almost impossible to get out. Now, I also used a particular quote that came from Wood Britain bequeathed us one of our most disastrous doctrines called immunity. Immunity means the king can do no wrong. In Great Britain, the king could do no wrong. So if you sued him, you couldn't sue him because he could do no wrong. Here in the United States, we put a little fancier term to that. It's called immunity. It means the judge can do no wrong. Therefore, nobody's accountable in this system. William Pitt, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, shortly after our revolution in 1789 said, "Necessity is the plea of every infringement of human freedom. It is the argument of tyrants." And our system of CPS is on necessity. We have to protect the children, so we have no more Fourth Amendment. We have to break into your home without a warrant. We have to, therefore, we have to drug them. We have to protect your children, therefore we have to take them from you. It's all built on necessity. It's the creed of tyrants. That is CPS in a nutshell. However, they're wrong statistically, literally, and by using the statistics that come from right down the street, 95% of the time they're wrong. That's not a very good percentage when it comes to children. Let me repeat that quote. Necessity is the plea for every infringement of human freedom. It is the argument of tyrants. It is the creed of slaves. Necessity is the foundation of the child protective system. Your rights must fall because we must protect the children.
Excuse me.
I've been there when those children cried. I've watched them get pried off of their mother's arms. I've watched the parents cry and ache for years as they lose their children. Now you who are here probably realize that that is not hyperbole. If I went and said this to almost any audience that I speak to, they say, "Oh, come on, Hession, you're way over the top." I'm not, am I? No. So, let me give you a little bit of that about how this child protective system works and what we can do about it. In 1974, a senator by the name of Walter Mondale got a idea. We need to pass a law. It was called Child Abuse Protection and Treatment Act, CAPTA. What it did was put together a federal pattern that was required to be adopted by each state if you want to get better. They couldn't pass it fast enough, and then their hands were out and have stayed out for the last 30 years. All money is the locomotive that drives child protection. 90% of the funds that are available from the federal government are available to take children. 10% to help families. So the proportion is completely out of whack. Then, under President Clinton, another law was signed which finished the job, called Adoption and Safe Families Act, ASFA. That law set quotas for the states to sell these children at the end of the foster care lease period. So now we have a lease sale deal going on with children. And the quotas, if they are exceeded, allows the state to get even more cash. For good measure, if the state can falsely declare that the child is a special needs child, in other words, if you give them drugs, which almost all children who are stolen into captivity are drugged, then they can increase the funds even more. Double, triple, quadruple. A colleague of mine calculated that a really useful child could bring as much as $250,000 to the state per year.